Good morning, guys. It's Greg here. It's Friday, May 17th, 2019. And I just wanted to do another SHTF scenario video today. I was just thinking of different scenarios last night of new videos that I could make, and I think I would roll out one today. So for this scenario, we're going to talk about how you would handle an ambush. You know, if you were on the road or hiking, or you were with your family or your group, your prepper group, your survival group, your community, after a disaster or SHTF situation, you may band together with other survivors and you may create a group, and you guys may be hiking through an area to get to another area for whatever reason. Maybe you're out looking for resources, or maybe you need to go to a bug out location or a safer location. So, let's say you're with your family or your prepper group, and all of a sudden you get ambushed, while you're out there somewhere, either on the road or on foot. You should think about these kind of things in your prepping, because it's definitely a high likelihood, in my opinion, if there's any type of real SHTF or WROL, without rule of law situation in this country. I feel that a lot of criminals and those types of people are going to try to take advantage of the situation, obviously, and they're probably going to ambush people, and they may not even be criminals. It could also be other survivors. They may set up ambushes, or roadblocks to try to obtain resources from people who pass by their town or pass through their neighborhood. They may set up a roadblock and say you're not allowed to pass through unless you give us, some bullets and fuel or something, or whatever the situation is, food, whatever. They may charge you like a toll to get through, or they may just take everything, depending on how desperate they are. So it may not just be the criminals; it could be anybody. People become desperate when they have no food and they're hungry, and their children are hungry. They become desperate. So you can't just always assume it's only the criminal elements that are going to be a threat in SHTF or WROL. It could also be, your neighbors, people that normally are friendly to you every day. Maybe, once they start getting hungry and desperate, they may turn into a threat. So you should always be very cautious when you encounter people in post SHTF situation, post SHTF environment. You should always be cautious when you approach people, because you never know what their intentions are going to be. They may act like your friend, and they may act like they want to help you, or be your ally or whatever, but you don't know if they're just trying to trick you, and then at some point in the future they may steal your stuff while you're sleeping, or whatever, steal your car or steal your weapons, and then ditch you. So always be very skeptical of people. And but back to the ambush situation. So ambushes, in my opinion, are going to be a high likelihood in an SHTF situation. I think there's going to be a lot of ambushes around, just because a lot of desperate people are going to need resources, and also criminals are going to capitalize on the situation, and then try to, because they know that the police are not going to be able to respond, because they're going to be overwhelmed. And there's just simply not enough police to cover, every square foot, or every single road, in every single town in this country. So it's just physically impossible to get that kind of coverage. Police in general operate on the principle of, deterrence. Most jurisdictions are outnumbered. Population to police officers are outnumbered. 100 to 1. So every one cop you have 100 people. So it's a deterrent. Obviously, that's the theory behind having police. It's a deterrent and a response force, but it was never meant to be a type of security service where they're going to be able to cover every single road and protect you. You have to be self-reliant and be able to make good decisions and respond to threats on your own and handle your own personal security and your family's security. You can't rely on other people and government services to protect you. You have to take that into your own hands. So I think that with the ambushes, I think it's definitely going to happen if there's an SHTF in this country, or a regional SHTF or national, whatever. I think it's a high chance. I think that especially as time goes on and once people realize that the power's out and it's not coming back for nobody knows when it's coming back, or it's not coming back for weeks, that's when I think after like 2 to 3 days, once people realize that the grid is down, that's when all of the bad elements are gonna start to become mobilizing, and they're gonna feel it. They're gonna feel less restricted, and then once that happens, they're gonna go out there and they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna rob people. They're gonna steal. They're gonna do whatever criminals do. And one of those things I think they're gonna do, like I said, is they're gonna set up ambushes. They may have big groups. There may be like a group of 5 or 10 people, 5 or 10 guys, and they'll just block off a road, and they'll do it in such a way that you're not going to see it coming until it's too late. And once you're in front of them, then they may have people that come out from the sides of the road, and they surround your vehicle, and you can't back out, you can't reverse, and they have you at gunpoint, and then at that point you're at their mercy. You have, there's nothing you can really do. I mean, you could try to, if you have a pistol or some type of weapon that's concealed, you may be able to get a shot off, but then you risk getting into a gun battle, and if your family's in the car with you, they can get hit with bullets. So you don't want to be in that situation. If you're on your own and your family's not around, that's different maybe, but you have to consider these things in your prepping. Consider human behavior as part of prepping, and think about human behavior and how people are going to react when there's a real SHTF. And so I think the best way to avoid an ambush is to pick your routes carefully. If you have a bug out location and you plan on driving there after SHTF, or you have some other type of safe spot, where you plan on getting to that, let's say you may have family members, in a different state, or they live in a more secluded area, and it's for whatever reason it's better to go there than to stay where you are. Maybe it's a localized disaster, and you want to get away from the threat in your local area, so you got to go to your family that lives in another state. Let's say if it's a hurricane or whatever, you should think about your routes and pick your routes carefully. In my opinion, after SHTF, I would stay off of like really isolated roadways, and I know a lot of people are gonna say that's stupid, but I feel that if you go on the really rural, isolated roads, that there's more of a chance that you're gonna get ambushed over there, because the police officers and National Guard, they're not gonna really be patrolling those outlying areas and those really secluded areas that they're not going to be over there. So, and then on top of that, there's less people that drive through that area. So if something were to happen, there's less of a chance that somebody could help you out. You're going to pretty much be on your own. So I would try to avoid like any type of back roads, or like really just like single lane, back road type roads where there's no way to get off the road, and there's no like turns or anything. There's no not turns, the side streets or any type of cross streets that you could just pull off of. If you're on like a road that just goes straight for miles and miles through like a wooded area, or like a rural area, that type of road, in my opinion, is a good area to get ambushed. Because there's also areas where people can hide on the side of the road. If you're in an urban area and you're on a highway, it's not as many areas where you can really hide. And generally in urban roads you can see for long distances because there's not a lot of turns. So you have a highway and it's going straight, and you can see like at least quarter mile to half a mile ahead of you. If somebody's going to set up an ambush, they're going to usually set it up around the turn. That's typically where ambushes are set up, and that's just that's just common knowledge. Or if you read any type of military tactics from different countries, then you'll learn that ambushes are typically set up after a turn, or usually like around the turn. Because as soon as you round that turn, you can't see what's around the other side of the turn. So that's where the best spot it is to ambush somebody, right? So I would also avoid any type of roads that have low visibility. If you can't see, you should look at the map when you're planning your bug out route. And if you can't see further than you should be able to see for most of when you're looking at the map of your road, the road should be mostly straight, and there should be a lot of crossroads, and it shouldn't be like an isolated road, as I mentioned. And any type of turns, you should always be very careful of any type of turns, especially like a sharp turn or something like that, because that's where I think an ambush would occur. Or any type of choke point as well. Like if you have to go over a bridge, either with your car or on foot, any type of choke point or a funnel is also a good area for somebody to ambush you, because there's really no way for you to get off or escape. Like in the case of a bridge, if you're driving over a bridge, somebody can see you coming over the bridge. All they have to do is just block off one side, and then when you try to reverse and turn around and leave, they'll already be blocking off the other one, and then you're screwed. So be very careful when you're crossing bridges. Be very careful when you're going around turns. Try to plan out your routes, so this way you avoid those types of choke points and blind spots. Try to stay to more, in my opinion, you don't want to be in the center of the city, obviously, but try to avoid the back roads, unless you have like a group of other vehicles or other people and you're in a pretty large group, then I would say you're okay. But if you're just like you and your family, and you're on your own, and you're the man of the house, and you have your kids and your wife, in my opinion, I wouldn't really go on back roads like that or isolated areas, because if you were to get ambushed out there, there's just really nobody's going to come by and be able to help you, and there's not going to be any bystanders nearby because it's a less traveled road. And the bad guys are going to know that. Bad guys, they're not, some of them are stupid, but some of them are smart too. That's why they commit crimes at night. They don't commit crimes in the middle of the day because you can see everything. Bad guys commit crimes at night because it's less visibility. It's harder to see them. So you have to put yourself, in order to anticipate situations like that, you have to put yourself, in the mind of somebody who would do something like that. And they're not gonna, most likely, I mean, they may do ambushes in the middle of the day if we're talking about a prolonged SHTF, as SHTF gets longer and longer and the time gets further and further, then the chances of ambushes or any types of marauders or attacks are going to go up at any time of the day. But I think initially they're going to try to go at night. And, obviously the nighttime, I would also avoid driving on any kind of roads at night because, people are going to see your car from a long distance away because you have your headlights. And if you're in, let's say, a rural area or even in a city, those headlights are just going to stick out from a long distance, and that'll just alert your potential attackers that you're coming and give them time to prepare. So I would avoid traveling at night, also because of the less visibility. Although that could be negated with modern technology. If you have night vision or thermal cameras, it's not as much of a thing that it used to be. But still, I think that if there was any type of ambush, it would be set up at night. It would be set up around blind spots, choke points, turns in the road, or if you're on a hiking trail or some type of walkway, or any type of area where foot traffic is going to happen. It could even be like a abandoned railroad line. Typically I would be extremely cautious around turns and any kind of choke points, as I mentioned, bridges. Avoid traveling at night, and try to band together and create a larger group, because if you have a group, let's say you have like 3 or 4 families together, and you guys are traveling in sort of like an armada. You have like 3 cars, 4 cars, and everybody's armed, or most people in each vehicle are armed. Or if you're on foot, and you have like a couple of different families together, and you kind of spread yourself out, and make sure you guys don't have any friendly fire. You spread yourself out, it's going to be much harder for you guys to get pinned down. And that's also another thing with the ambushes, is that you want to make sure that you're not clustered together. And there's a military term for that. It's well known if you study military history or military tactics, war. It was heavily used by Napoleon. And that's the concept of enfilade and defilade. And I'm not going to really get too into it, but essentially what it means is that in war, if you're trying to ambush somebody, you want to make sure that they have all the way that you direct your fire at somebody or a group of people, or a military unit, or some type of group of whatever. It could be an armada, a group of vehicles. You want to have them clustered together as much as possible. So this way, when your troops or your group, when you guys direct your fire at them, it's going to have the most maximum benefit. You're going to take them all out, and that's the concept of an enfilade and a defilade. And I'm not going to really spend too much more time, but just remember that if you're grouped together and your group is traveling down the road or hiking, in an area, and you guys are bundled together, if somebody ambushes you and you guys are all together and grouped together in like a small group or in a straight line, you're just going to get, mowed down pretty much, and it's going to be or even if you don't get mowed down by, whoever's shooting at you, it's much easier for you to get pinned down if you're not spread out. If you're spread out and you have people that are, let's say 20 yards apart, or your vehicles are spread apart, they're not going to be able to, take you guys all out in one shot because you're spread out. So as soon as they open fire on, let's say, the first vehicle, then they're going to have to deal with the 2-3 vehicles behind them, behind you, the first vehicle, and that's when you can, start shooting back at them, and it's not going to be as effective. So the tip here is don't, bunch together. Spread yourself out, spread your cars out. Try to avoid that type of situation. If you want to read more about it, just look up enfilade and defilade. And you never want to be in a situation where all you guys are bunched together. I guess the best example would be like in a military ambush. If you're traveling in like a column formation, and you're marching in a column, and somebody ambushes you, and you're in like a fire team or platoon, whatever it is, and you're marching in a column and somebody ambushes you guys. If they're shooting straight at you, they're just gonna mow the whole column down. That's why most modern militaries, infantry forces, they don't march in columns in areas where they expect to run into any type of enemy fire. They usually spread apart. They usually spread themselves apart, so this way they avoid that from happening. I know that a lot of U.S. military units, they use I think it's like the V formation, and they spread themselves out, so this way you can't get mowed down by somebody or pinned down. It's much harder. It's much harder if you're trying to ambush 20 people, a group of 20, and they're all bunched together, and you could pretty much take most of them out if you have 3 or 4 guys with overlapping fields of fire. But if if that group of 20 is spread out, it's going to be much harder, right? Because as soon as you don't have a concentrated area where you can just concentrate your fire into all of them, as soon as you shoot at one, the rest are going to disperse and they're going to take cover and shoot back at you. So just keep that in mind when you're traveling in SHTF. If you're driving or hiking, remember that concept. And then, like I said, avoid any type of sharp turns, blind spots, choke points, bridges, things like that. Avoid heavily wooded terrain at night, and isolated areas where there's going to be less police and National Guard. I would avoid those types of areas. Any type of area where somebody can hide and provide an ambush from, that'll give good concealment for a potential ambusher. Stay away from that. And also another thing is high crime areas. If you go into a high crime area, that's also obviously a good area for an ambush to occur. If you're driving through a city, I would really avoid areas that are known to have high crime rates, especially post SHTF, because those areas will obviously have people who are more likely to conduct an attack on other people and steal their resources or whatever they want to do. So avoid the high crime areas as well. I think that's pretty much it for this video. And just remember to practice with your firearm, and be comfortable with your firearm. If you own a firearm and legally you can own one and you have one, make sure you're practicing with it regularly. It doesn't do you good and anybody else any good if you only practice once a year or twice a year. You should be ideally practicing at least every 2 or 3 months, I would say. Even that's pushing it. I personally like to go like shooting at least once a month. I think that's enough. And you don't have to shoot a bunch of ammo, like you don't have to shoot like thousands of rounds each time. Even if you just go and shoot like go through a couple of different drills and some basic motions, and work on your 7 fundamentals of marksmanship. Just focus on that, and don't get too carried away with a lot of the more advanced tactical type shooting. just focus on the fundamentals of marksmanship, you know, focus on, you know, the basic stances, basic shooting stances, and just get really good with that. And then from there, you can increase your difficulty levels and trying to simulate more realistic scenarios, you know, with, you know, you could increase your heart rate, you could do cardio before you shoot, you know, you could figure out ways to apply stress, you know, shoot in different weather conditions, you know, shoot from uncomfortable positions, you know, things like that. But, you know, practice with your weapon, become really familiar with it, know how to maintain it, know how to fix it, you know, learn about gunsmithing and how weapons work, you know, learn about these things, you know, learn about, you know, beyond just the basics, you know, a semi-automatic, I pop the magazine in and I chamber around and I'm good, you know. Try to learn a little more like intermediate to advanced stuff, so this way, you know, if you're on the road and your gun malfunctions, you can, you know, you can fix it, you know, because once SHTF occurs, you're not going to be able to just Google it, you know, you're not going to be able to go on YouTube and, you know, watch a video about how to fix your gun, you know. You should kind of, you know the inner workings of your main weapon that you're going to be using to defend yourself and your family. You should know the inner workings and be comfortable with it and know everything. So that's pretty much it, guys. It's for the SHTF scenario for, you know, ambushes, you know. So like I said, think about all those different things, and if you have any other suggestions, you know, let me know. And any other good tips to avoid being ambushed. Alright guys, I'll be back with another video soon, and I'll talk to you guys later. Alright, take care, God bless.